It's really all about the driving of innovation through the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's autonomous challenge, which, first of all, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think it's also something that is needed in the industry because I know it's what the manufacturers need to work on. And no better proving ground ever than auto racing. You just think of all of the things, all of the advancements of safety that have happened since knuckleheads started crashing race cars, from collapsible steering columns to safer fuel cells to better bumpers to everything that's on your daily driver is there because of crashes at a racetrack. So this group is going to be a fascinating discussion, and thankfully I've got Mr. John Warniak from SEMA on the end to help me with this discussion because his expertise much better than mine in this area. So starting out, we're going to introduce the panel, and we're going to start out with you, Mr. Bowles. When your job includes arriving at a place that has been near and dear to your heart since you were a little kid, I'm not sure you can call that work.
It is not work. Definitely not work.
Okay, so recently I hear there's been a few changes at the office. Something about like 70, first thing big to happen in like 74 years or something.
Yeah, just a couple.
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
First of all, I'm Doug Bowles. I'm the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I owe you an apology for not attending SEMA this year.
Well, understandable.
So I was at Texas Motor Speedway for the NASCAR race on the Saturday watching the Xfinity race, and I get a call from the office that says, I need you home at 7 a.m. on Monday morning at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and you can't tell anybody why you're coming home. So I'm trying to tell the team, the Road Racing Industry Council folks who had their Road Racing Industry Council on Sunday why I wasn't going to make it was relatively difficult, but not as hard as trying to explain to my wife, who was going to meet me in Vegas for our anniversary, that she needed to cancel her flight because I was coming home. I had a 7 a.m. meeting Monday at the Speedway, and she said, are you getting fired? And I had to convince her over the course of 36 hours that I didn't think so, but I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. And then on Monday, we made the announcement that Roger Penske was purchasing the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We also, that week, made the announcement of the Indy Autonomous Challenge. And that's really why I wanted to be there with you guys, was because we are really excited about this. But definitely not work at our place because we love it so much. But Roger has been in several times over the last 4.5 weeks, and most of those times include showing up at 7 in the morning and staying until midnight at the office. We worked one Friday night until about 8:30. He was actually supposed to go home on Friday and decided to stay. And we got done at 8:30 on Friday, and he said, hey, why don't you meet me for breakfast at 6:30 at the Conrad tomorrow morning? So I called my wife and said, hey, I'm coming home, but I got to leave in the morning. But I'm not going to be late for Roger Penske. So I'm going to leave the office or leave the house about 20 till 6 because I want to be there by 10 after because I don't want him waiting on me. So I park my car at 10 after. I walk in the door of the Conrad 20 minutes early. Roger Penske is sitting in the lobby looking out the door, and he says, glad you could make it. And so I'm 20 minutes early, but I'm late. So what I've learned with Roger Penske is you have to be an hour early to make sure you're actually early. But it's going to be it's going to be great for the Speedway. More importantly, for all of us in this room, it's great for motorsport. As we're going out and trying to sell our sport and sell our companies that are involved in our sport, when you have a billionaire who's not running from our sport but investing in it, should be a story we're all telling because it helps us all. It is a tool that works, and Roger Penske is perfect proof that it's the place we all need to be.
Very good. Very well put, too. Our next guest has a unique accent, and it's not because you're from Jersey. Fluent in 6 languages and studying a 7th right now. I
haven't learned English yet.
There you go. Well, you and I are equal then, because I barely speak English. And I hope you can understand me, because I barely speak that one language. You're CEO of Dallara USA, located in Speedway, Indiana. Beautiful place to be located. And you're going to be building the chassis for the Autonomous Challenge as well as was already involved in many racing series, including IndyCar. Stefano, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I thought you had a breakfast at Charlie Brown instead.
That was the next
with,
part.
Okay. I'm Stefano De Ponti. I'm a CEO and General Manager of Dallara USA. We've been blessed since 2010 to build our factory here in Indianapolis, in Speedway, Indiana, to support the IndyCar Series and Indy Light Series. As well as we are an engineering company, so that gave us the opportunity to develop other businesses, in particular in aerospace and defense. So we have important contracts with the major companies here in the United States, not related to motorsports, that give us the chance to stay in business. But yeah, you're right. As soon as we knew about these challenges for autonomous vehicle, we are not going to design a new car. We are using the existing one, which is an Indy Light chassis. The Indy Light organization and Dan Anderson basically gave us the approval to move forward to this interesting project, something that we are very keen to pursuing. Dallara is always looking for new challenges, especially in new technologies. Lately, last year actually, our governor, Eric Holcomb, moved to Italy with a delegation of 15 other personalities of the state of Indiana to make an inauguration of the Dallara Academy, which is a joint venture between a museum and a school where we're offering a master degree in collaboration with Motor Valley companies, including Ferrari, Maserati, Lamborghini, Ducati, Magneti Marelli. In addition to that, we open up a specific department to study and to develop the electronics. So that will be a huge beneficial help in this project. As you know, or maybe I don't know how many of you know about Dallara, you of the audience, we are supporting the majority of the racing series all over the world. I would say there are about 350 Dallara cars racing in every weekend in different series, including Formula One with Gene Haas. This is a new challenge with us. It's a new competition, not only because involved the engineering and the mechanical part of it, but most important also for Dallara because we are very into the academic work. We're going to work with the university, with the colleges. So that's the university. We're producing cars, and the cars and design are produced by the engineers. And obviously the engineers using the same technology, they are the one that also will support the economy, the American industry, the American technologies. And looking ahead, forecasting where the automotive world is going associated with racing, electronic, hybrid, and autonomous. So this is a challenge that we want to take.
Very cool. Energy Systems Network's goal is to advance clean, safe, and affordable transportation technologies by collaborating with corporate and strategic partners. I told you I barely speak English. Matt Peak, your expertise in catalyzing emerging transportation and clean energy technologies is key to this role. Tell folks a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So Energy Systems Network is a local Indianapolis-based nonprofit, and we work as you heard, with industry in market-oriented directions to discover and commercialize new energy and transportation technologies. And that's really our goal, is to really push the envelope and create opportunities, market opportunities, educational opportunities. And the project that we've teed up with the panel that you see before you is hitting all of those notes. This was something that was really brought about and inspired us, beginning with the Motor Speedway a year and a half ago. There were two seeds that were planted in our mind that really resonated with all of us. One was the IMS's proud history of being the original automotive technology proving ground. I mean, going back 100 years, which when you read literature today, you read about proving grounds across the United States, but to know that, this was the first one and that we have an opportunity to perhaps, deploy and push the envelope on the next generation of automotive technologies is really exciting. The other one was we were inspired by a competition that took place about 15 years ago called the DARPA Grand Challenge. This was $1 million competition, just like ours is. And it basically created the automated vehicle industry that you see today. Everybody who has become CEO, who has gotten money from Silicon Valley, started companies and whatnot, they all have roots in the DARPA Grand Challenge. And what really gave us clarity on what we wanted to do with this was when we learned the role that universities played in making the DARPA Grand Challenge an incredible success. The fact that universities, that it wasn't a competition explicitly oriented around universities, but one that really attracted their attention, and it ended up being a big boon. The team from Stanford won, but you saw heavy participation from real engineering powerhouses, and that's what catalyzed the talent. So our effort is oriented around all of those things. It's oriented around pushing the envelope on the next generation of automotive technologies. At the automotive technology proving ground, the first one, that was ever established, and creating this educational opportunity that's also a future industry training tool for the next generation of automotive engineers. And I'll also, while I have the mic, draw your attention to the renderings that you see on the right side of the page, because what we're announcing today are Dallara has produced, with their top-notch designers in Italy, renderings of what our competition vehicle will look like. And this was basically our first of many challenges, you could say, that we put before the Dallara graphic designers, which was, well, look, we know that this is going to be based on the Indy Lights chassis. And we know that this is going to be an engineering exercise to integrate all of this new hardware and componentry into, what's a pretty tight cockpit. How might this come together? What might these vehicles look like? And so these are tools that we're putting forth today and sharing with universities as we spread the word about this opportunity.
Our next guest, when your name is associated with two champions, Clemson University and Alan Kulwicki, that's a pretty big deal. Rob Pruka, you're the director of the 12th generation Deep Orange prototyping program at Clemson University. What the heck is that? And please introduce yourself.
All right, great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Rob Pruka. I'm a professor in the Department of Automotive Engineering at Clemson, and as you mentioned, I'm the Kulwicki Professor in motorsports engineering specifically, which is an endowment through the Brooks family that was created years ago when the unfortunate plane crash happened. So as part of our program, we're in Greenville, South Carolina. We do, we found out years ago that you can't teach kids how to design a car through a textbook. You just need to go ahead and try to build one. And so we developed a program we call Deep Orange, and that's where we take our master students and we design and build a prototype vehicle. We identify a customer, in this case it's all of these people on the stage, and then we ultimately execute a vehicle and test it, and that's the way that we educate the next generation of students. And so as part of Deep Orange 12, or the 12th generation of these projects, Clemson University will be in charge of taking this gorgeous IL-15 chassis and turning it into the driverless vehicle that you see over there, and then also communicating with the competition teams to make sure that they get the software and hardware that they need on the vehicle to perform the, to race for the $1 million prize at the end of the day.
Very cool indeed. Well, welcome. It's great to have you here as well. If I told our next guest to build me a better mousetrap, it'd probably have stealth technology, but look a little bit like a very fast Roomba with a supercharger, maybe. John Warniak's background in automotive and aviation has really uniquely prepared you for your role as the Vice President of Vehicle Technology at SEMA, and your help here at the Racetrack Business Conference, working with Tim and I, has been invaluable to getting that link between SEMA and PRI going, along with the education, and sort of carry on with the seminars that you hold out at the SEMA show, which are fantastic every year. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Dr. D. It's an honor to be here. I've been at all 8, in the audience, the first one, I believe, and then on the stage since. So hopefully there's some value that comes out of our discussion today, which I think you'll find very unique value. Through the years, we've spoken about basically what I'll call the significance and relevance of the 6 dimensions of motorsport: athletes, fans, organizations, sponsors, and the technology and everything that goes behind that, and the tracks, obviously. The Indy Autonomous Challenge is not about taking great drivers like Lynn St. James here out of the loop, or new drivers like Gracie out of the loop. It's about solving world problems and demonstrating technology on the world stage. And that is pretty much the definition of racing. Certainly the Speedway. You mentioned the 100-year proving ground and all the great things and technologies that have come on. You can think of the Speedway, in this case, as the NASA moonshot, because those technologies do get into production. But we're moving past significance. We're moving past relevance. The vehicle does not have to be relevant to what you buy in the showroom. What it has to be is, I'm going to call it relatable. How many people can relate to the technology on their phones? Probably more importantly, you can relate to what the technology on your phone does for you. And the Indy Autonomous Challenge is going to define what an autonomous vehicle can do, and probably more importantly for all the consumers in the world where these technologies are being adopted, what the vehicle cannot do. And there's a great opportunity at Thunder Hill. David knows this well. Stanford worked with some of the top drifter drivers like Ken Block to get inside of Ken's head and, through artificial intelligence, machine language, make that vehicle autonomously drift better than Ken could. The purpose wasn't to eliminate Ken's job. It was to take full advantage of the physics and science of that vehicle so that the engineers know that, in this case, the tire and the traction and the interface to the road to take full advantage of all the technologies on board an autonomous car. So a lot of great stuff here to talk about today.
Thank you very much, John, and your help here on this panel is very valuable. Thank you very much. All right, Doug, how the heck did this idea for an autonomous challenge at Indy come about, and what is the purpose of it for the Speedway?
Well, its roots really started 111 years ago, almost today. If any of you are staying at Embassy Suites over it used to be called Claypool Terrace, that was at the time when Carl Fisher had this crazy idea about building the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in December of 1908. That was the hotel with the most bathrooms of any hotel in America at the time. And it was a place where leaders of Indianapolis gathered to talk about how they were going to move the city of Indianapolis forward. And Carl Fisher had this crazy idea that he was going to move the city of Indianapolis forward through a racetrack he was going to build on the west side of Indianapolis. And the idea behind that, he was going to bring a facility together so that all of the automotive manufacturers, and back in the early 1900s, that wasn't the big three, right? It was the guy and gal working in their garage, pumping out 2 or 3 cars a year. That was what the automotive industry looked like. There were dozens of them in the state of Indiana, and he wanted to build something to allow those folks, once they got outside of the center city where there weren't roads, a place that they could test. So this really is in our DNA. And in 1909, when the Indianapolis Motor Speedway began, those first races you saw were not race cars. They were passenger cars, modified a little bit, but passenger cars to prove how those cars were going to be the next technology. They were going to replace the horseless carriage, even though people didn't believe that might be the case. So we were designed to prove the new technology of the day. Over the course of the last 110 years, we've gotten to the point where the new technology of the day is really what you see on your phone. It's all the technology that goes in the race cars. It's not necessarily the race car itself. In 1911, the first rearview mirror is seen at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Ray Haroon wins the Indianapolis 500. And a variety of things have happened since that day. The diesel technology was proven at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Safer walls is the most recent advancement at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And Matt Mindrum, who's in the back, probably keeping up on emails, but Matt is really our lead on our team. Matt and I started talking a few years ago about what can we do to connect to that real DNA. Racing does a little bit of it still. Firestone tests their tire technology. Goodyear tests their tire technology. Chevrolet and Honda in the IndyCar series are definitely testing some of their technology, especially their fuel-saving technology that they have through the racing program. But we wanted to really get back to it. We reached out to our friends at ESN and said, hey, we've got this crazy idea. And Matt and his team said, we've got this crazy idea too. How do we put it together? So we spent the last 18 months really trying to explore what it looks like. And originally, we thought it might be alternative power, so battery power, solar power. And ultimately, over time, we realized that the best place for us to land was on the autonomous side of it. So that's really where we are because of our DNA. And as I said, it really did start 110 years ago at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 110 years ago today, The Indianapolis Motor Speedway just finished its first season of racing, and literally coming on to the last couple days of putting those 3+ million bricks in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which really changed our name forever in December of 1909 when we became the Brickyard. So that's really how we got here. We're excited to be here. For those of you in the room that are promoters, I am first and foremost a promoter. This is absolutely, and John mentioned this is absolutely not about replacing race car drivers. This is about using our sport, our technology, and our platform to prove that racing does transfer to what people buy in the showrooms. And this is an opportunity for us to really be leading on that, not just proving the technology that we have today, but leading on the new technology that for many of us, it's our kids and our grandkids that will really experience that, and we hope that we're laying that groundwork and that platform so that people look back, just like we have on the DARPA Challenge, look back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy AV Challenge and say, you know what, that technology started at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Matt, while the idea of an autonomous driving vehicle out on the roadway and having all autonomous driving vehicles scares me almost as much as Indiana drivers, why was the autonomous challenge, why is the timing right for this?
So if you read newspaper articles and journals and whatnot, you would think that automated vehicles are here today, right? You would read about big Waymo pilots that take place in Tempe, Arizona that are shuttling passengers everywhere. You would read about robotic cars in San Francisco that are picking up people and taking, revenue and whatnot, and you would think, okay, the technology's here today. But when you really look at it and you see, how far the technology has to go, it's really leaps and bounds. I mean, it's to be a truly commercialized technology for a hands-off automated vehicle requires that they be trusted in every single situation. And right now, the level of trust is measured by disengagement. So basically, every automated vehicle that's out there has a safety driver that's in the driver's seat and takes over for the car should the car make an error. And there's just too many of them, right? But we also see the fact that the data is coming out for cars that you probably already have in your garage today, that a generation of automated vehicle technologies called ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, which are lower levels of automation, things that assist humans drive better, have tremendous potential to save people's lives. These are systems that can brake if you don't see an obstacle in time to brake. These are things that can keep all of us, in our lanes as, we doze off inadvertently. These are things that can help us avoid accidents actively and not just passively. And we know from the history of prize competitions that they have a proud history of really pushing not just the development of technologies, but the commercialization of technologies. And we feel like we can do that with this competition. We can really drive and push the envelope for what these technologies can do, but also given that we're doing it, at one of the world's most famous racetracks, word's going to get out about this, and that's our goal. We want to show that these technologies can make a difference in people's lives today, not just in the distant future, and they don't have to be just hands-off automation. They can be when humans are still in control.
Rob, can you explain Clemson's role in this autonomous challenge?
Sure, sounds good. So we're going to take a base Indy Lights chassis and essentially add the human back into it, but it's going to be through computing. So if you can imagine all the things a human does, steer the vehicle, brake the vehicle, run the throttle, the clutch, those are the sort of drive-by-wire systems will have to be incorporated into that vehicle. We have the driver sees, right? They have perception systems. We call them perception systems. That's the radars, lidars, cameras, that sort of thing. But to locate them on the vehicle, make sure they're going to function at the high speeds that the vehicle is going to run, and then also add the computing platforms that will go inside the where the driver would normally sit. We also have to consider things like how much power would go, electrical power needs to be generated to run those systems, that sort of thing. And then also we're going to develop a software framework that the competition teams will interface with. So for example, we may have some vehicle dynamics models on board that will tell us, okay, in this situation you can only steer this far or that far, and provide that information to the team so they're less likely to have an accident on the track. And so it's a lot of that framework that we set up, and so that the competition teams can take and put their algorithm in or their brain into there and start making decisions about how to go around the track. So that's our job.
Very cool. Stefano, what is the top speed of an Indy Lights? Oh my goodness, I'm Get my family Italians coming
Yeah,
out. Sorry about that. What is the top speed of an Indy Light car? And in the autonomous mode, where do you expect that top speed to be at Indy?
Well, in a qualified trim at the IMS, we went over 200 miles per hour, so quite impressive. I hope to repeat the same or maybe go fast, who knows?
Is it going to be the same engine technology, or is it going to be a little bit different?
We're still evaluating what would the best engine or motor would it be. Obviously, we're working with other partners, technical partners, engineering partners, and to figure out what would be the best component to fit on the car to set the records and to set the race. But going back what Doug Bowles was saying before, I buy 100% what he said. If I can translate in one word, the DNA we got here on the stage is a competition. And the competition is not only limited between the traditional kind of racing, which is we all love with drivers and traditional cars. There's a competition also behind the scenes, the competition to improve safety. There's a competition to improve technology, cost saving, reliability of cars or products, on everything. So this is what I think one of the subjects that's supposed to be with this challenge, to stimulate the industries and potentially other manufacturers and other industry that will come in on board and try to study, to work together and as an engineering companies to see what could be a beneficial, again, for the industries. That's what the purpose of the racings does. As far as the fans, of course, there will be another target, maybe another audience, but at the end of the day, I think it will stimulate a bunch of racing fans in total. At the end of the day, like we said, we talk about competition, and when you have competition in the blood, it doesn't matter what you race or what you do, it's just time to be there and try to win and to make your product successful.
Very cool. John, this whole conversation, this whole thing about talking about the Autonomous Challenge began out at SEMA this year, talking about the tie-in between technology and racing and, giving the manufacturers what they need as a proving ground for this technology. I look at autonomous vehicles and, on the road, you can only test them to about 75 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour.
Legally.
Illegally. But here we're going to be doing something that, in my mind, is extraordinary. Continuing with the conversations that you had out at SEMA, share with our audience a little bit about how excited this makes you.
Well, the two fastest ways to advance technology are, one, war, so we won't go that way. The other is competition, as Stefano said. So competition, and SEMA's roots are competition. That drives technology very, very quickly. The other thing I'll say that SEMA can help bring to the Indy Autonomous Challenge is the cool factor. Racing is cool. There's no doubt about it. Motorsports is cool. So the next generation of STEM and STEAM students around the world, as well as with drivers, the best drivers in the world are who? Race car drivers. They know how to maneuver the edge cases during a race. They can do that faster, better than most drivers, although some in Indianapolis might think they are race car drivers. But they do that consistently. So to take what they know and what they do and put that into the vehicle that the average driver can take advantage of those systems, as Matt mentioned, there's 5 levels of autonomy on a vehicle. We're arguably right about level 0 through 2. The Tesla Autopilot is a level 2 ADAS, Advanced Driver Assist System. It's labeled, branded as Autopilot. It cannot drive itself. Just like the Volvo, the woman that got killed in Tempe, Arizona. That vehicle cannot drive itself. You have to have a safety driver. We will probably have safety racers in these vehicles, maybe the first race, 2 years, don't know. But as cars become more connected, automated, and electrified, they get faster, cooler, smarter, and certainly safer. So safety and these edge factors coming off the IMS, the racetrack, into everyday production, people will relate to that technology because it saves lives.
Doug, you've seen the transformation at the racetrack. You know, the old school fans, when you added an event on the road course early in the month of May, you know, the month of May was sacred to be only on the oval for so many years. How do you think the autonomous challenge is going to go over with your old school fans? But more importantly, do you think that the technology side of this might actually get that younger generation of fan juiced up to watch a regular race at Indy as well?
You know, those are both great questions and both a little complicated, right? We hope that, I'll start with your last one first. You know, we actually hope that this is going to engage youth, obviously through the universities that participate, but even those kids that are engineering students or interested in technology that aren't in one of the participating universities, we hope that this is making enough noise that people are paying attention to at least the racing and the racetrack component of it. And then we have to do a good job of drawing the connection between that new technology and the technology that already exists in racing. No matter what level of racing it is, there is some level of technology that makes that work. So we have to figure out still how to draw that connection to draw those folks in. As it relates to the longtime Indianapolis Motor Speedway Indy 500 fan, I call 10 customers every night. And one thing I can tell you, I can tell, when we announced the Snake Pit, for example, we got a lot of pushback from our customers who had been in the original Snake Pit. So the Snake Pit today is a concert that features EDM acts on race day, Indy 500 race day, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and it's almost 30,000 young adults under the age of 30. And I had these difficult conversations with old-timers who said, why do you want those people? They're not race fans. You should be focused on racing, folks. And when you begin to tell them the story of why we did it, or you ask them the question, what was your first experience at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? And especially when you caught somebody that their first experience was the original Snake Pit, and oftentimes that was that organic party inside Turn 1. Oftentimes those folks would tell you, well, I didn't see a lap of the race, but I grew up and this is what I did. I come to the Indy 500 on Memorial Day weekend. So they realized that this was the new way to connect youth. I do think our hardcore Indianapolis 500 fan who understands our history and tradition and understands that we are a technology platform, a place to test technology, a platform to do that, I think most of them will get it and understand it. I think the biggest pushback we'll have, and we talked about on the stage already, is that fan that's going to say, well, I don't really come just to watch cars. I come to watch the personalities that drive those cars. So you can't take that element away from the fan. And that's not, again, the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to use our facility for what it was built to be used for in the early days, which is to test the new technology. And much of that technology, we believe, will ultimately be technology that will help the drivers' cars operate better, be able to deliver more information to a driver while they're driving so that they can make better decisions on who's around them, what's going on with their car. So we believe that from that side, I think it's an easier conversation. The hard part, and all of us have this, especially those of you that are promoters, is how do we connect to that next generation under the age of 30? What this does do, and we're confident of this, it does draw attention to racing, and it will draw attention to our facility. The question is, can we then transfer that interest and that understanding of our facility and racing over to what we think of as traditional racing?
I've never heard of the Snake Pit characterized as an organic party.
Well, that's probably fair. It's a beer party for sure, and back in the day, it was a little more than that, probably.
Probably some organic.
Yeah, there probably was
Things in there. Yeah.
There you go. So I never attended the original Snake Pit. I had a rule, even when I was in college, and my college buddies would come out and they'd want to drink. And in my mind, the racetrack was not a place for drinking. It was a place for supporting the racing, understanding what was going on. So I never did get a chance to kind of wander through the Snake Pit. I did take several guys home back to the university who had spent their day there, however.
Matt, you guys think outside the box there. That's your whole job. That's your whole life's work right now. This is going to be a kind of a curveball of a question to you, but how much faster do you think this will push the quality of autonomous driving by doing it at high speed?
So if you were to break down what we've solved and what we haven't solved, I guess you could say, and I'm just eyeballing here, around 80% of automation has been solved, and that's the easiest part of automation, and that's not an insult to engineers that are out there. It's a recognition that so-called edge cases linger. And what edge cases are these infrequent yet expected happenings that can cause real harm, real danger. Think of driving along a street with cars parked on the side of the road and a kid chasing a ball out into the street at the very last minute and you having to slam on your brake. Doesn't happen a lot, but when it happens, it's really important that you maintain control of the vehicle and whatnot. Same thing goes on the freeway. You got cruise control set at 65, 70. The car in front of you is a truck that drops a piece of lumber. And all of a sudden you have to go from boring nothing on the side of the road to activating your brain and saying there's an impending accident. Can I swerve left? Is there a vehicle there? Can I swerve right? Is there a vehicle there? 40,000 deaths occur every year, more or less, on roadways. And what they estimate and project is about 94% of those are caused by so-called human factors. And what human factors are texting while you're driving, eating while you're driving. If any of you are Mr. Bean fans, just watch the episode where he wakes up late for work and gets ready for work in his Mini Cooper on his way there, and you'll know what human factors are. But basically, you know, that's what these technologies have the ability to do, you know, to get back to your question, which is solve edge cases. This is the most difficult, one of the most difficult elements of automation, which is preparing for the unexpected so that when it comes along, you ensure safety, you ensure control, you don't avoid one accident and create another.
Great answer. All right, Rob, I'm going to put you on the spot as well with just from this discussion. What is the value of the Autonomous Challenge to Clemson and to your program?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, so our goal is to be the best in the world. Right? I mean, that's it. We want to provide the best education we can in the world. This is a best in the world kind of project. That's it. I mean, there's obviously, you know, the driverless piece of it is super hard, right? But it's our future. And so we have to be working on this. There is obviously, you know, there are all the educational pieces of it. But also, I think just putting us into competition, as they said earlier, is another huge piece of it, and it definitely progresses us faster. Another thing that I see is that I'm a racing fan my whole life as well, and there are some accidents that I've seen recently that were stopped vehicles on the track and that sort of thing that were horrible accidents that could be prevented in racing. And I think things like these vehicle-to-vehicle communication systems, which we'll have to have on these vehicles, would stop that. So if there's a car hits the wall and comes back across the track, the other driver should be warned that there's a cross-path detection. You know, that we have these systems on passenger cars today, or we can. Cadillac had it in production. And so these kinds of things also drive us along. Can we make racing safer through this kind of work? Can we take some of these new technologies that honestly some of us are just scared of and integrate them into racing to make it safer without taking the driver out, but just making, you know, they're still doing the same job, but when things go really wrong in these situations you can't always see coming, that maybe we can come up with a better way to warn that driver that, hey, don't drive through that cloud of smoke. You know, it's not going to go well. And that's the kind of stuff that I think also drives us so that we could hopefully make the sport that we all love safer at the end of the day.
John, you're a unique background. Like I mentioned, you not only involved in the automotive world, but also in the aviation world. We already have the proof that automation is safer and more efficient for air travel. How will that translate, or maybe similar systems end up being put to play in the automotive world?
That's a good question. I think, and I think that's part of the purpose, if not the raison d'etre, if you will, of the Indy Autonomous Challenge is proof of concept that it works. How many folks flew here to PRI? How many folks flew on a 737 MAX? 0. Because that, again, that MCAS system is very much like an ADAS system. The maneuver capability augmented system on that airplane was self-certified by Boeing. In this case, no disrespect to Boeing. But those things need to be proven. The edge cases weren't there. As Matt said, you can't, everything left brain that a computer does can't compensate for the right brain side that the computer doesn't have. That's what we want to build into these systems. And to prove that out through proof of concept projects like, I love what Rob just said, to be the best, to prove that the automotive, or I should call it the automobility industry, is moving forward with these relatable, relevant, and significant technologies, that is what is going to make racing cool to the next generation and continue making it cool. There's a cohort of fans already that are already part of that, but those are the go-to people that their friends will come to and say, tell me what that technology means to me that's happening with the Indy Autonomous Challenge. That's what's going to go viral.
Very cool. Stefano, how difficult is it going to be for the folks at Clemson to take your Dallara chassis that is not made for autonomous racing and have all the sensors that they need, the sensor space that they need? I mean, how much is going to have to go into this to get this vehicle to the track? And how confident are you that your Indy Lights chassis is going to be a great platform for this challenge?
It's a great question. I think, I hope it could be as smooth as possible, but on the same time, it must be as challenging as possible, so that it will stimulate both of us, the engineering company and the academic world, to study and to do the best job we can. I believe, I want to tell you the story about talking about the transition in technology, as Doug was telling me. I was born and raised in Monza, and I don't know how many of the audience knows the banking in Monza. We call it sopraelevata. God knows how many times I broke my pants or tried to climb it up. It's pretty banking there. So if you go back in the days, that's I think the last race between the Europeans and America raced there in 1967. AJ Foyt, the answers raced there, and so forth. So if you think how the transition of the technology went back in the days, racing with in that kind of racetrack, with those cars and those things, and where we at now. I don't recall to have the university involved back in the days, designing or working with the cars manufacturers or OEM to do the car. Right now we are, and thanks to that. So that is another positive addition to our sports, the academic help. So where do the engineering mechanics coming from? University. So I think going back to your questions, we need to work together, obviously, and stimulate the knowledge. There's a lot of unknown that we don't know as a engineering manufacturer, because the autonomous vehicle is not what we do every day. For us, it will be a new challenges, but we are very confident that working with the university, we try to go through all the problems and try to make this transition as smooth as possible.
I'm going to toss this question out there, and I'm not sure who the right person to challenge or take on this challenge is, but it's something I see right now in motorsports. And Doug, maybe this one's right in your wheelhouse. In some ways, there's a bit of a disconnect between what the manufacturers need racing to be doing for them and what some of the old school fans like myself especially want to see. Because I have tried my hardest to embrace Formula E, for example, and I just can't quite do it. And why? I love to hear that roar of the engines at Indy. That's part of the appeal to me. And if I came to the Indianapolis 500 and the motors were silent, or even worse, had fake noise to make me think that it was a real engine, I'd probably be missing out. But is the fact that there is a little bit of a disconnect between where we are in racing and what it can do for the manufacturer, and still can do quite a bit, is that one of the reasons that challenges like this might be more important going forward?
You think about what our sport was designed to do. So the Speedway was designed to test new technology, but immediately the car manufacturers saw it as a marketing tool as well, right? So we have become largely now a marketing tool across the board when you look at our sport. We don't like to use the word spec series, but NASCAR, IndyCar, we have a platform that's used across all the teams. So it really has become more of at least outward facing as a marketing tool. There's still Chevrolet, for example, Honda, for example, are doing all kinds of things in the technology, improving things that they can transfer to the cars that we drive today, but we just don't see them as well. You know, one of the things I'm excited about this challenge that deals with one of your issues, which is part of the racing experience, is how it involves every sense you have. Smell, sight, sound, all of that is what makes the racing so special. When you take away the sound, you fundamentally change the sport. Our idea behind this really is that the car will have sound. It will probably be an internal combustion engine, something that we're used to seeing. So what we're really doing here is testing the technology that drives it. For those of you that have ever read Wilbur Shaw's autobiography, in Wilbur Shaw's book, he talks about how he fell in love with the automobile. And one of the things he did in the teens, the 19 teens, he was a battery salesman. He was selling batteries to folks who were selling battery-powered cars, because in the early teens, we hadn't decided that we were going to be an internal combustion engine country or a battery-powered country. And so his first few years, he was selling batteries for battery-powered vehicles. And he tells the story in his book of how he had figured out how to lighten up his car as much as he could, take the best technology battery, and he could get almost 50 miles per hour out of a car. He realized as he was selling, though, he was selling to people who were not viewing the car as anything more than an appliance. And he literally says in his book, he said, I decided at that point in time I was going to go find a new job, because there was no way that the red-blooded Americans were going to buy anything but the internal combustion engine. So there's been an argument for the electrical vehicle from the beginning of the vehicle. And while that technology is interesting, and while Formula E proves out some interesting it's trying to prove out some interesting concepts, as a racing fan, there is something lost, especially when you go to an event and you see an electrical powered car and you think, man, that sounds like my son's remote control vehicle, right? It does not give you all those senses. So what I'm excited about this is it's going to take those elements that we're used to, continue to hold on to them, but then take us to that next level of the technology. And it's that technology, I think, that we're all going to be seeing before we see the battery powered and all that take over.
Very cool. Well,
I could probably address that a little as well.
Sure.
You're going to be okay. This one, based on, okay, my students have to come up with this answer ultimately, so maybe I'm doing their homework for them. But if we need to make 450 horsepower for a half an hour, I can calculate the size of the battery that's needed and the discharge rates, and it's basically not possible today. And so just from a risk point of view, the IC engine is the right answer in this case. It might have to be somewhat hybridized to make the electricity levels we need to run all these systems. But you need to pull the equivalent of probably 2 Teslas behind you at this point just to make those laps. And because the power levels, and they're sustained in this case, are much higher than what they are in Formula E. They're a lower power level vehicle, and it's just not, we're just not there yet. We might be someday, but it's not there yet for sure. And so the technical direction in this one is IC engine all the way.
Okay. Well, folks, we could continue this conversation and make it last for about 4 weeks. There's so much here, but we're very fascinated. We're very thankful that you all joined us today here at the Racetrack Business Conference. We're going to give you one last chance to wrap things up. We're going to take it in a little different order. Stefano, we're leading off with you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank for the opportunity, everyone, to be here to listen what we got to say. As a Dallara representative, we are very excited to start this project. Again, it's something very, very new, but we are very stimulated, especially to work with the academic world. Something that already started in Italy, and we try to implement the same, I would say, study business model in the U.S. to have an engineering company to implement and to improve the connections with the academic world to form the best engineers for the industries.
Rob, final thoughts.
Yeah. Sure. So it's all about people, right? And our job is to try to generate the next generation of talent. So the women and men that will ultimately design these driverless vehicles in the future. And the thing that happened to us about 8 years ago, we had a bunch of suppliers come to us and say, we can't hire enough of your students because they don't know enough about software yet. And so that's totally changed the way that we do education, and doing projects like this is really, it's right up our alley these days for what the auto industry is asking for. And so we're excited to be a part of it. And again, we just look forward to all of your support as well, as we're trying to really just educate a lot of these geniuses that are going to be working on these cars, to how to ultimately make vehicles safer for all of us in the future.
Matt, final thoughts.
Visit IndyAutonomousChallenge.com. A lot of what you heard up here today is captured up there and more. The renderings are up there. The list of innovations, a partial list of innovations that the IMS has generated over the years is captured up there as well. Also help us spread the word to universities. It's not every day that world-class institutions like IMS, Dallara, Clemson, our simulation sponsor ANSYS show up and say, hey, come compete for $1 million, work with these foremost industry leaders, get a whole bunch of free simulation software and collaborate with world institutions from around the world. So it's an opportunity for universities, help us spread the word. On top of that, one thing that also wasn't mentioned, our sponsors that are coming together, not just who's up here on the stage today. As I mentioned, ANSYS is our simulation sponsor, but we're also in the process of rounding out the list for sponsors that are going to work with us, get a first row seat at the innovation coming out of the world's top universities, and collaborate with us to help make these vehicles in this competition happen. So visit IndyAutonomousChallenge.com, approach us, we'd love to talk with you.
John Warniak, your final comments.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the technological impact of racing and all the great benefits of that to society. I think the Indy Autonomous Challenge is going to have a societal impact. And if you look at Formula E as an example, is the race-tainment, if you will, marketing and racing coming together with Formula E? Probably not. I mean, we talked about this lack of sound. What about the lack of smell? I grew up on two-stroke and race gas. And, Herb Fish and all that. I used to ask my wife to put it behind her ears, and she says, "No, it burns. It burns." So but you have to have those surreal elements of racing, and if you don't believe the societal impact of what Indy Autonomous Challenge is going to do, just listen to the passion of little Greta Thunberg. Anybody know who that is? It means a lot to them, the societal impact, and if racing can help bring the safer, more social consciousness of racing to your tracks and to society, then the Indy Autonomous Challenge is doing the absolute right thing.
Doug, take us home.
I don't know how you follow putting two-stroke smell behind. Although there is something about a two-stroke smell in there, right? Whether it's a jet ski or a go-kart that just really gets you going. First of all, I just want to say on behalf of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we couldn't be prouder to be part of your industry, to work alongside you guys. Those of us in the automotive industry, we do drive change. I just got finished reading a book a couple months ago called The Aviators, and John will really appreciate this. And it really talks about how technology advanced through three folks who were invested in motorsports and aviation. Those really are the two industries that drive change, that impact the way that we travel, the way that we communicate. All of it is done through motorsports and through aviation. Eddie Rickenbacker, Charles Lindbergh, and Jimmy Doolittle, three unbelievable personalities. You read that story, you read the technology that they dealt with, how they drove change through their passion for airplanes and their passion for cars, is what this all is all about. It's what you guys do every day. You get people to get engaged with your brands because of your passion for the sport, and I'm so proud to call myself a colleague with each of you. Thanks for having us. Thanks for being here today and listening to us. We can't wait to see what the next couple years holds, and we love learning from you guys as well. So look forward to staying in touch.
What did we learn from this panel today? We learned that this challenge is not intended to replace drivers. In fact, the driver is going to be an important part of helping drive the artificial intelligence needed to pull off this challenge. What else did we learn? Racing is still the best testing ground for new technology, and there is no better place to do that testing than at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the original testing ground. Big round of applause.